Dear colleagues, friends, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this virtual roundtable discussion on digital cooperation and on how to support and advance the different digital initiatives here at the United Nations. In Estonia, digital technologies have played a pivotal role in building a strong, effective, and value-based digital society. 99% of our public services are online. Our routine public administration has been paperless already for 15 years, saving us an extra 2% of GDP every year. Since most of our schools and kindergartens already have used for years digital learning solutions, the transition to online homeschooling during the COVID pandemic was relatively smooth for us. The digital ID cards allow Estonians not only to use and access our digital services from all over the world, but they also allow Estonians to approve which part of their information can be accessed and reused by which public service, avoiding any government misuse. There is hence a huge potential in digital technologies and their role in building open, transparent, and inclusive societies and enhancing economic and social progress. Estonia has experienced some of these benefits firsthand, and we have been happy to share our digitalization experience with many other countries globally. One key aspect that we have learned from building our national digital ecosystem is that you cannot do that without close cooperation between different stakeholders. It is crucial that governments, private sector, and civil society work together. We fully support the Secretary General's multi-stakeholder initiatives, the roadmap for digital cooperation, and most recently, our common agenda. That aim to bring together these different stakeholders to reach an understanding on what kind of digital future we need and how to realize it. The creation of the Office of the Envoy for Technology has been instrumental in this regard, and we commend the remarkable job the office has done during the past year. We thought that today's discussion would be a good opportunity to take some stock on the opportunities and challenges for the United Nations to advance our digital future. In the spirit of multi-stakeholder approach, we have a panel of different stakeholder representatives who are well versed to share their views and perspectives on this issue. Of course, we welcome an active participation of all who have joined us today. Without further ado, I will hand it over now to Leah Kaspar, who is the Executive Director of the Global Partners Digital and our moderator of today's discussion. Wish you all a fruitful discussion, and Leah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's really great to be here today. Good morning to all of you on the east side, and good afternoon for those of you in continental Europe and elsewhere. I'm dialing in here from sunny Croatia. Today, Zagreb it's a beautiful February day, and I want to use this opportunity before we kick off our discussion to thank the Estonian mission and the government of Estonia for continuing to lead this agenda. I remember back in 2014, at the time Estonia was chairing the Freedom Online Coalition, and the warm welcome and I want to say the leadership that the Estonian government has shown ever since to promoting and advancing this agenda, specifically to the multi-stakeholder collaboration when it comes to advancing it, has been much appreciated by the community. So just to say that outright. Now, very much excited to have a distinguished panel with me today that you can see on your screen. Just to note that this event is live streamed, so we have participants in the room who will have an opportunity to make interventions and take the floor. But we will be kicking off our conversation with our panelists first and allow them to provide introductory remarks with regards to the topic we are discussing. As His Excellency noted, the focus of this conversation is going to be on the role of the United Nations in advancing the digital cooperation agenda. That is not to say that there are other conversations taking place in other places, and including all other individual stakeholders, states, private sector, civil society, the technical community, that are all playing a part in promoting and advancing this agenda. I know a lot of us are thinking about these questions, and I know for a fact that I'm interested to hear what our panelists think about the role of the UN, and specifically the role of the Envoy on Technology that has been set up by the SG I want to say in crafting a path to human-centric digital cooperation. I think that's what we want to talk about specifically today. All right, I'll now allow my distinguished panel to take the floor. And just before I hand over to the first speaker, we do have representatives from different stakeholder groups. Ms. Francesca Spatolisano. I knew I was going to butcher your name. I'm so sorry. I was ready for it, and it always happens. But obviously, we'll come to you first. Now, Ms. Spatolisano is the acting tech envoy on technology, and is well placed to give us, I want to say, whistle-stop tour of what the office does at the moment. You've been in this role for, I want to say, the last year, and now is an excellent opportunity to maybe introduce the role, maybe tell us more about some of the challenges that you have faced over the last year as an introduction, and then we'll go to the next speakers. But with that, Ms. Spatolisano, Francesca, as we agreed, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Leah. You're not alone. Everybody has trouble with my long Italian name. So thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador Jürgenson, for inviting me today. I really welcome this opportunity to reflect, take stock with all of you on digital cooperation, the UN work on digital cooperation. And I will go briefly indeed through what we did, what we achieved in this year, and then look ahead, what are the challenges and possibly the ways to overcome them. And as you said, I've been leading the Tech Envoy office for now almost a year. And candidly speaking, it has been a challenging year. We've been particularly grateful for the support that we have received by all the partners. And that includes UN agencies, member states, stakeholders, tech companies, and NGOs. And I think the track record of the office speaks for itself. That's why I want to present to you what we did. And we have performed maybe even above the expectations given the rather difficult circumstances and the very little resources we had throughout the year. So the office engages very actively and leads or co-leads with numerous multilateral, interagency, and multi-stakeholder activities. And we have, for instance, bolstered the UN system-wide collaboration in areas such as digital rights, artificial intelligence, misinformation, capacity building. And we have also catalyzed new partnerships. So let me mention, for instance, the artificial intelligence for road safety, something very concrete, child online protection, important, and even environmental sustainability, thanks to a lot of partnerships, as I was saying, and all while maintaining a major, I think, online and offline presence, which communicates really our work openly and transparently. And I believe that despite all these obstacles we have clearly demonstrated the value and the need of this office within the UN system, what the UN value added is. And we look forward now in 2022 to continue on this path that we started. We will continue to implement the Secretary General's roadmap for digital cooperation. And we expect to have a number of key achievements of deliverables from our roundtables in the coming months. And this include, for instance, very important, the launch of a baseline for meaningful universal connectivity so that we all can relate to this concept in the same way, or the implementation of digital capacity building through a joint facility and a multi-stakeholder network, which will put together demand and offer and inform everybody what is available. We also expect major activities from the Coalition on Digital Environmental Sustainability, which is a very, very relevant topic. And we provide and will continue to strengthen our support to the UN Resident Coordinator System, as well as the interagency work at the UN on issues related to artificial intelligence and digital human rights. So at the same time, this office has been entrusted with an even bigger responsibility looking ahead, and that is to follow up on the Secretary General's proposal in his recent report known as the Common Agenda, our Common Agenda, to achieve a global digital compact. This is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to bring governments, the private sector, civil society, and indeed all stakeholders together to reach an understanding on the underlying principles for the online world we want, an open, free, and secure digital future for all, as you all know. We are looking forward to hearing more views on this proposal at the open consultation being convened by the President of the General Assembly later this month. That will greatly help us to direct our work in the right direction, I'm sure. And as we look at the rest of 2022, I would like to highlight briefly 3 areas for challenges and opportunities which await us. And I would really appreciate your reflections and thoughts. First of all, I think it's fundamental, internet must remain an open space. But we all know that the tech environment today is extremely fraught, and major powers now see technology as a space for geopolitical rivalry, and the concept of an open and free internet is increasingly under threat. I believe that the right response is not, of course, to promote or encourage actions that might deepen discord or cement differences and ultimately worsen the fractures in the online space. It would only exacerbate risks and threats to each other, to every one of us. And instead, we have to pursue an open and free internet that can and must be global in nature. And we must continue, therefore, to emphasize the multilateral, multi-stakeholder approaches that engage all of us, and also the UN role as the universal, neutral, fair convening space for all these discussions. My second point is related, of course, to the first one, and I think one way around the polarization is to renew our efforts on what unites us, like issues of connectivity, capacity building, narrowing the digital divide. Everybody would agree on this, I think, and this could serve, therefore, as a bridge to translate otherwise divisive issues into more pragmatic questions of implementation. In other words, we should redouble the efforts to achieve universal and meaningful connectivity, bringing the over 2.9 billion people globally who still offline online, and they can therefore fully access the benefits of internet and the digital technologies. Fundamental to this conversation on connectivity is ensuring that people are brought online, inclusive, safe, and empowering way, a fundamental human-centered approach, as you were saying. So countries may get stuck in very abstract debates, ideological questions, but we can bring the conversation down, I believe, to these practical questions and give access to individuals to the online space in ways that do not put them at risk, with proper protection for their individual data and privacy, and ensuring they do not experience violence or harassment online. And this would indeed uphold the principles of human rights and individual dignity in practice, addressing, amongst other things, questions of affordability, of education, local languages, local content, and privacy and security by design. And finally, third point, I believe we need renewed efforts around multi-stakeholderism. Now, it's obvious, it's a truism that in the digital space, member states cannot go alone. And the ambassador mentioned his country's experience, which proves it. However, current systems of global governments are naturally state-led, and not all international bodies, and much less decision-making processes, are open to civil society organization or the companies that are developing these technologies. So how do we do this? We have to recognize that this is the nature of things. This is how the system is set. And we are indeed encountering, for instance, difficulties in navigating the space of stakeholder engagement in, I mentioned, the open-ended working group and cybercrime processes at the UN. So there are differences of views about the Secretary General Common Agenda, which centers, of course, around the idea of primacy of membership. So there are moves at the same time towards the Global Digital Compact, and we must find a way of doing things that allow stakeholders a place at the table, while still ensuring, and that is, as I said, the nature of the things, that member states have full buy-in. I recall here what the Tunis agenda says. That is, all stakeholders participate, and I quote, in their respective roles. So I would like to say, especially to civil society partners, that although I share your concerns and zeal, and as much as we try to advocate for this, ultimately, many of these things are not up to my office to decide, especially when it comes to changing long-held practices and decisions made by member states. And we need to work together to address in a strategic way how we do this. And I want to end by making an appeal to all those who support the work of this office, believe in the value of the UN and the Tech Envoy mandate, to continue supporting it. You can make strong public statements, you can actively participate in our activities, and of course, possibly also contribute financially. There is much work to be done. Huge expectations on the office, demands, and no lack of bold ideas. And partnerships that could develop, which are in the works, but for the lack of resources, of the office, that could hamper and delay our common objectives. So I hope to count on your continuing support for this office, for its team, and for the next Tech Envoy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francesca, for framing the conversation in this way. This is incredibly helpful, and also for all your efforts in advancing this agenda. I want to come next to Marina Kaljuran now. Marina, Marina is the current member of the European Parliament and Estonia's nominee for the Tech Envoy, the process which I think has now just been closed very recently. What is interesting, I think, listening to Francesca's remarks, was that I was thinking how, Marina, you have been in the middle of some of these geopolitical tensions over the last decade, with your role in the group of governmental experts and different panels you've sat on, including the high-level panel, but also the Global Commission as well. I want to kind of come to you for your introductory remarks, especially from your and kind of, yes, listen to your experience and insight as a representative of a member state. Marina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, yeah. And before I start, I'd also like to thank Estonian Mission and Ambassador, my very good friend Sven, for organizing today's event, and really happy and proud to speak and to be on the same screen with some old friends, with some new friends. Trust me, I prefer to see you face to face. Hopefully we will come soon to that. But at the moment, really happy and proud to share the screen with you. And yes, Leah, as you mentioned, and as also Ambassador said, I'm proud and humbled to be the Estonian nominee for the candidate for the next Tech Envoy position. And trust me, it's an additional pressure and additional responsibility, but I bear it very proudly. I have a couple of points that I'd like to share with you at the beginning of our today's discussion, and I decided to go from the easy ones to the more difficult ones and to the more challenging ones. To start with, Maria Francesca, I absolutely admire what you personally and your office have done, because you had limited financial resources, you had limited human resources, and I'm not mentioning all the other things around and about the office. And under these difficult circumstances, you have made this office workable, visible, and responsible also for their achievements in the good sense of the word. So when I first read your report on what you did in 2021, it was absolutely astonishing. So all the best in your future endeavors, whatever it's going to be. Personally, when I was on the high-level panel advising Secretary General, I was reluctant to admit that we need Tech Envoy. I come from a small country with, again, limited financial and human resources, and my preference has always been to look into what we have and to see if we can manage with the existing forums, existing institutions. And if we see that not, then think about new additional institutions. But I agreed to my colleagues. So the proposal was in the report, the proposal was in the roadmap, and today I can say that it was the right decision. The last year has shown the importance of Tech Envoy's office. My second point, UN. We might have different feelings, different understandings of the work of the United Nations. We might have different approaches towards the work of the Security Council. We might think that some of the institutions of the United Nations are stuck in the after-war period in 1950s, but UN is today the only organization of its kind. And we have to take maximum advantage of that. UN brings together all states, and UN is ready to bring on board into the discussions different stakeholders. And here I think that UN has a special role to play. And when Francesca mentioned the 3 points, then I think the multi-stakeholderism, which is a difficult concept, which raises different understandings. Even if we all say the same, we understand it differently and we behave differently. I think that here, UN can play a leading role. UN is doing it already at the IGF, which is now more IGF+, but I think that even with the digital compact and with the open-ended discussions and consultations that are happening at the moment, UN can show that it can bring together different stakeholders. In one of my previous lives, I had the honor of chairing the Global Commission on Stability of Cyberspace. And the Global Commission was one of the first institutions to sign the Paris Call for security, peace and security. Because exactly for us, it was the way how the real multi-stakeholderism, the real inclusiveness works. So I see here a role for the United Nations. I see here a role for the Tech Envoy's office. And I see that one of the solutions or one of the ways forward is IGF+. Because IGF already has so many benefits. It has well-developed infrastructure. It has acceptance by stakeholders. It has network of 114 national, regional, and youth IGFs. It's a big thing. Yes, it needs some improvements, and in the high-level panel suggested some of them. My next point, timing. Before I go to timing, I'll also mention the deliverables and the mission of the tech envoy. I think it's clear. In the terms of reference, Secretary General has stated very clearly what are his expectations. Understandable, is it deliverable? That's another question. I think that one of the successes or one of the deliverables is exactly the digital compact. Because we've seen that at the moment, we're not in a position to conclude any new international conventions. Happy to do that, happy to come to that point also in the later discussions, but we're politically not there, we're legally not there, and we are also, I do not see any need of writing anything new unless we will not be able to look very carefully into what we have already into the existing international law. But political norms are different. And what can also be done is raising awareness about what has been already agreed within the framework of the United Nations. My background is more with cybersecurity, so I was in the GGs. Unfortunately, we were not able to agree on the report in 2017 when I was member, the second time the member of the GG, but we had very good discussions on norms, political norms, on capacity building, on confidence building. At the same time, I have the feeling that even the reports are being adopted by General Assembly, there is not much knowledge about that, what has been agreed. So I also see that UN can do a lot more in raising awareness, and Tech Envoy's office also, I think, can do more raising awareness in what has already been achieved within the UN system. Timing, now it becomes more difficult. On one side, COVID pandemic has put digital topics on the agenda. Everybody is discussing digital topics. I come from Estonia, yeah? 2004, when we were raising the questions regionally, nobody listened to us. 2021, 2022, everybody's discussing. Digital topics have moved from the CIO offices to the CEO offices, from tech geeks to ministers, parliamentarians. And it's a big thing because there is attention. So from that point of view, the timing is good. At the same time, we're living in difficult geopolitical times, and the ideological division is bigger than it has been ever before, also with digital affairs, as Francesca mentioned so rightly. On one hand, we had the Summit of Democracies, yeah? On the other hand, we had the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Dushanbe. On one hand, we have GG that can agree on capacity building, confidence building, but can't agree on applicability of international law. On one hand, we all say the same sacred words: free, open, stable, secure internet. But we do not act like that, not all of us. We're building up our own internets in some countries. We all say inclusiveness, but when we start working with inclusiveness, we have different understanding. We do not want to include academia. We do not want to include private sector. We just pick which NGOs we want to talk to. So how to overcome that? That's a big question. I do not have solutions. Happy to listen also to others. And my final point is also on the work of the UN agencies. I don't know if there's anybody who knows exactly what the agencies are doing what in digital sphere. There's lots of duplication, but I think that there is also some question of rivalry. Everybody's sitting on their assignments, on their silos, and are not so eager to reach out to the other silos. So if there is anybody who knows exactly what's happening with trade, human rights, development cooperation, cybersecurity, connectivity, and so on and so on and so on, that person deserves a Nobel Prize. So that's one of the things, how to make UN, not only globally, but within the organization more better organized, less duplicating, less rivalry, talking much more to each other and listening much more to each other. I'm a former diplomat, yeah? I believe that diplomacy is art of listening, finding compromises. So we have to start with finding compromises. But the difficult question is, how low and how far can we fall? If we once agreed international law applies to cyber domain, can we agree on less? If we once agreed human rights online are equal to human rights offline, can we agree on less? No. And these are the difficult questions where I think that the next Tech Envoy will have a lot to work on, but whoever that person is or will be, I just hope that the person will have lots of enthusiasm, capacity, and wish to continue the work that the office has been doing so far. Thank you, and I'll stop here.
Thanks very much, Marina. A couple of themes seem to be emerging, and one of them is the underlying principles for the common agenda. The other one is multi-stakeholder cooperation, and so one is kind of on the what side, what is it that we're trying to promote? The other is the how. We've now heard from the Office of the Tech, and we've also heard from Marina as a representative of a member state. But we do also have other stakeholders here on the panel, and I want to come to first Laura Bryan, who is representing Access Now. She's a UN advocacy officer there. Laura, I want to hear specifically on when it comes to principles, and Marina just alluded to that. It's not Wild West. The UN itself relies on principles that we've all agreed on, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, international law more generally. I do want to come to you for your reflections on that, and specifically on the question of the role of human rights in advancing our common agenda, common digital agenda. So Laura, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Leah. And first off, I want to thank Estonia, the mission, for hosting this session and for inviting Access Now to participate. So for those who don't know, Access Now is an ECOSOC accredited international organization, and we're dedicated to defending and extending the digital rights of users at risk worldwide. We have been actively engaged in the UN Secretary General's multi-stakeholder initiatives, including the Digital Cooperation Roundtable, specifically 3AB, where we focused on digital human rights, the subsequent roadmap for digital cooperation, as well as calling for greater transparency on the appointment of the UN Tech Envoy. So Leah, as you mentioned, I really want to focus my intervention today on the human rights component of this discussion and what we're joining here, and starting on the roles of different stakeholders in this. And I want to draw on one key part in the concept note, which I looked at, was the key themes and the practical opportunities for engagement by the United Nations, but looking specifically at the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so when we're looking at the SDGs and the 2030 Agenda in general, and as they relate to multi-stakeholder efforts within the UN Secretary General's initiatives, the one key theme that I want to focus on is bridging digital divides and connectivity. And I'm really very grateful that Maria Francesca highlighted in her intervention this key theme, because we too do see this as a challenge and a way to both overcome the differences and also address the urgency of the current context that we're in. So I'm going to start with SDG 9C, which some of you may be aware, it targets universal, affordable, and internet access by 2020. And we believe that this target in particular was significant for two reasons. The first is that it had a shorter deadline than the overall 2030 agenda. It reflects an overall understanding of the urgent need to bring people online as a means to enable the realization of other human rights as well. And second, this target is particular because, it was set before the COVID-19 pandemic, which has only amplified the recognition of the internet as an essential tool for daily life. So governments can no longer hide from the stark reality of those who are disconnected from the internet, whether this is from shutdowns or otherwise, from exercising a broad range of their human rights. And we can link this back to the central theme of the discussion today in enshrining a human-centric approach. According to the Danish Institute for Human Rights, over 90% of the SDG targets are connected to international human rights as well as labor. And so therefore, the 2030 agenda is grounded in human rights, and protecting such rights is necessary to reach the SDGs. And we can then link the existing initiatives within the Sustainable Development Goals to the roadmap, where again, human rights served as a very core in the roadmap. You know, in paragraph 40, there was a specific example citing that blanket internet shutdowns are considered by the United Nations human rights mechanisms to be a violation of international human rights law. And then again, leading to our common agenda, the common agenda, there's this section on improving digital cooperation, which we've all talked about, establishes the Global Digital Compact, again, centering on human rights with goals such as applying human rights online and connecting all people to the internet. So it's very clear that there's these existing norms. And to echo Marina, what has already been done and achieved in the UN, we need to build off of that. And what we need to focus on is application and implementation. And this starts, in our opinion, with remobilizing the political will. And surely, given the global context with rising authoritarianism, a pandemic, climate change, systemic racism, we shouldn't have to reiterate just how urgent this is. And key actions are being undertaken now stemming from the roadmap. For instance, OHCHR is working on the human rights due diligence guidance, but we need to go beyond this and not just reiterate the roadmap in every resolution, but advance initiatives in the resolutions, in the Human Rights Council, and overall dialogue on human rights on the digital age. And we must focus those efforts on those who are most at risk, the most vulnerable, and those who have been left at the margins. When we speak about the Sustainable Development Goals or any of the initiatives that are being taken, we have to remember that it's not just about statistics, who's offline, who's online. It's about people. And more importantly, it's about those people who are excluded. This past month alone, we've witnessed an alarming rate of internet shutdown in Kazakhstan, where so far there have been at least 225 people who have been killed and 10,000 people arrested. In Burkina Faso, a newly added country to the list, implementing shutdowns. And of course, the looming situation in Myanmar. We can't understate the urgency of the situation on ensuring implementation and application. And then turning to the final point on the role of different stakeholders. And I really want to echo His Excellency today, the remarks at the beginning about the critical importance of working together. And similar to Leah, I want to thank Estonia for leading on this agenda. So for when it comes to governments, you know, again, I stated remobilizing political will, application, and implementation, but we should also be using existing platforms to galvanize a member state alliance ahead of key upcoming initiatives. This includes, you know, the Global Digital Compact, such as Maria Francesca and Lorena have mentioned, which is happening later this month. And, you know, leveraging opportunities such as the Freedom Online Coalition and other opportunities to do this as well. With consideration to the UN and the tech envoy, we need to center the mission on those most at risk and routinely consult with civil society on the transparency, but not just civil society like Access Now or others who are routinely speaking at the international level. We need to get more further to those located in the global south. And one thing to note is that in the roadmap, the OHCHR due diligence guidance does center on the marginalized communities and through consultations to ensure that those voices are most heard. And for recommendations on civil society, we need to keep mobilizing. I know colleagues are on this call right now who have been actively engaged in this dialogue, but we cannot be the same institutions who have done the roadmap or worked on the common agenda in these upcoming consultations. We need to go beyond. We need to connect with other NGOs located in the different sectors. And then finally, of course, with the private sector, I know John will speak more to this, but just as the UN and states need to center on those most at risk, so do the companies. And I think in my final note, I will allude to the fact that RightsCon is a perfect opportunity to bring together activists, civil society representatives from all over the world, not just those who are actively involved in the UN, but also UN agencies and governments together to discuss more of these pressing issues in the digital age and really center the discussion on human rights.
Thanks so much, Laura, and thank you for providing that segue to our last panelist, to John Frank, who is the Vice President of UN Affairs at Microsoft. And now, John, what's interesting and why it's really good to have you on this panel, as some have alluded already, is that we were talking about digital technologies, which are privately owned. The role of companies and tech companies cannot be understated, which is on the one side, it goes, I want to say, not necessarily, well, reframes the role of states as well, I think, when it comes to what they can solve and to what extent they can actually resolve some of the challenges that are presented by digital technologies if they are not owning them. On the other side, it does raise questions that Laura now alluded to as well about the roles and responsibilities of companies and within the business and human rights framework or beyond. So it would be really good to kind of hear your remarks on how you see all of this. There might be some more specific questions that we come to. Maybe to start off, I would like to hear kind of how Microsoft has been approaching this and your, I guess, your general insight before we go into specifics. But John, over to you.
Thank you, Leah. And just to begin by thanking Ambassador Jürgenson and the mission for organizing this. And I do want a special call to Maria Francesca for the great work that she and her team have done this year. Really an invaluable partner for us, literally on a daily basis. Working with the team on a wide range of issues. And so, thank you very much. Microsoft, I think we're the first company to have a UN Affairs office. And our offices are just a couple of blocks away from the UN, and look out my window at the buildings. But there is a sense global governance institutions are needed now more than ever before. The problems that face our societies and our communities are actually global problems, whether it's cybersecurity or it's climate change. These broad issues. No one government can solve them by themselves. And certainly the private sector can't solve them by themselves. We all need to work together. And so I think, it's important to recognize that the role of the multi-stakeholder system of bringing together people to solve problems is incredibly important for us all. The role of business in society is, I think, evolved significantly. When I sort of studied economics in university, it was like Milton Friedman's view was the purpose of business is to make money, right? And I think there's still a profit motive, but our CEO says the role of a business is to solve society's problems profitably and bring solutions forward. And we think about multi-stakeholder capitalism. Certainly for us, shareholders are important, but employees are incredibly important. Customers are hugely important. And the communities where we live, work, and do business are important. And sort of like all of these facets come together in how we think about our business and who we engage with. And so I think the evolution is incredibly important to recognize. We do face, as you kindly alluded, some of us tech companies have been very successful. We have scalable technologies that we have customers around the world, and we're very profitable, just putting it out there. And we're not here in the UN Affairs team to deal with the regulation of our industry. That's dealt with in national capitals and in Brussels. Multi-stakeholder engagement for us is how we can contribute to some of these big society problems. And I do think that when we have a next tech envoy, I hope the selection process will include the demonstrated capacity to work in a multi-stakeholder environment. And certainly Marina's work on the Global Commission on Stability in Cyberspace, very successful. Multi-stakeholder process of bringing together very diverse views around the globe, I think is a great testament to Marina's demonstrated abilities here. But when I think about the opportunities in front of us, there's projects that we've been deeply engaged with, like the Paris Call for Trust and Security in Cyberspace. And it really grew out of the failure of the GGE in 2017 to adopt a report. And so we were looking like, well, what can we do to energize and provide support to the global governance around cyber. And so discussions with the German government, the French government, the people, the Global Commission and others, like emerged this idea of a multi-stakeholder declaration. And, you know, it was, you know, we go back and forth, whether it was 9 principles that people committed to or 9 projects that we committed to working on. But it really was, we agreed that we would work to take some basic ideas and elaborate them and get them ready for implementation. Because we realized there's hard work on solving the problem, not just agreeing to the sentence. And so, you know, when we first launched, I was then leading the European Government Affairs program and based in Brussels and working with the French government. And, you know, I had our team across Europe working with others to get European governments, businesses, trade associations, civil society to sign up. And I think, you know, so we were really quite pleased when it was announced at the Paris Peace Forum, and, you know, all 28 EU member states had signed, and a large segment of business as well, and civil society. We're now up to, I think the United States announced its signature at the Paris Peace Forum last November. And so we're up, I think, 78, 79 countries. And the challenge, though, is like, okay, the good news is you've got over 1,000 people who are signatories and endorsers. You know, that's a big challenge, though. Like, how do we use the community's efforts? And I think, you know, it comes down to, it's new for all of us, right? It's new for the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs to kind of, you know, be the lead sponsor of something like this. And it's new for companies. But, you know, we formed working groups, we've improved communication, and we're trying to actually make progress on real life problems. And I think that's so much of what the Tech Envoy's office can help us focus on. Because when we think about connectivity, I actually think there's a lot more people, more than 2.9 billion people who don't have meaningful connectivity, because I don't think we're doing a very good job measuring what meaningful is. And is it affordable? Simply getting access to the internet occasionally, to me, is not, you know, that's not enough. But it's a whole set of services around the human rights components. You know, do we have human rights front and center as we develop out, you know, internet access? Do we have public services that will meet the needs and advance education, healthcare, and, you know, improve the lives of farmers and in rural areas? And so there's all these services that have to go with this bundle. And first, it's got to be affordable. And I think a huge challenge is trying to get the different parts of the UN system, the World Bank, regional development banks, to be working collaboratively together so that we can actually make progress on the ground. Because right now, frankly, we're just not, you know, just doing more of the same is not going to get us there. We have to look at new cost-effective technologies. We have to look at new business models, recognize the great successes that do take place. And it is going to take money, but it's also going to take skilled people who can bring people together across all these institutions to bring about change together. And so that's what I think the Tech Envoy's office can be incredibly important for. And so I think it's you know, just a wonderful opportunity, and happy to participate in the discussion further.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, John. At this point, thanks to all the panelists for your introductory remarks. I do want to encourage our audience in the room as well, if to let me know if they want to take the floor or ask a question. You may also use the chat function, if you will, and I'll keep monitoring that for any questions that might come up. While you're thinking about it, or thinking about making interventions, I do want to now pose a question back to the entire panel, and whoever wants to come in can do so. And that is, I want to tease out a tension here with regards to the multi-stakeholder approach. Everyone has mentioned it. Everyone seems to like it. Everyone wants to, you know, integrate into some way into the work of the Tech Envoy's office and the broader UN. if it were that easy, we wouldn't be talking about it, right? So there are still challenges that remain. I think we all are very much aware of the fact that the ways in which digital tech has developed has not necessarily had the international state system in mind. Weary giants of flesh and how did it go of flesh and steel? You do not belong here. That all kind of manifest back from the 90s. Which basically told the states to stay away. We'll deal with this. This is our space. We are far, far away from that now. 2022. This is no longer the case. The states are very much making and shaping the rules of the road here. Now, what we've seen over the last couple of years, as the discussions about digital tech have permeated the United Nations discussions, that there has been this tension of thinking about how stakeholders are involved in these conversations. So this is not just about the tech envoy's office, but more broadly about conversations that I think Maria Francesca mentioned as well, and Marina alluded to as well. The first committee conversations in the open-ended working group, the conversations about cybercrime and elsewhere. I know for a fact that the conversations in the OEWG are currently being stuck on the question of modalities of how to bring stakeholders in. Let's be honest about this and say this is hard. And I do want to kind of come back to the panel to ask how you see this tension and how do we reconcile, what would be your recommendations for reconciling this tension between a multilateral, multi-stakeholder approach to thinking about digital cooperation? I know it's a big question. So if anyone wants to, has immediate thoughts on that, please do. I also see that Marco Romiti, I think from Italy, would like to ask a question. Marco, why don't I come to you first and then see if any of the panelists want to come back to my question or refer to whatever, to your intervention. Marco, would you like to take the floor? It's
yes.
Open to you.
Can you hear me? Thank you very much. Thank you, Excellencies, for this opportunity. Italy as well attaches the greatest importance to digital cooperation and to the role the United Nations, together with other actors such as the EU, can play in this field, in particular to ensure that digital technologies serve humanity's best purposes of peace, sustainable development and respect for human rights. As you said, in about 3 weeks, there will be an informal thematic consultation as a follow-up to the report of the Secretary General, our common agenda. And on the third thematic cluster, there will be a discussions of digital cooperation and of the digital compact as well. I would like to ask especially to the Assistant Secretary General and Officer in charge, Maria Francesca Spatolizano, who is doing an excellent work with her team in difficult situations, if she has some suggestions as to the key points and challenges to reflect on in this phase, in this specific case. I'm referring especially to the digital compact. And also another question, considering the forthcoming ECOSOC related events, how she sees the role of ECOSOC in advancing digital cooperation, taking also account of the expertise of the broader multi-stakeholder community and the importance of taking in the multi-stakeholder community in this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marco. Maria Francesca, I don't know whether you have immediate reactions to that. That was directed directly at you. I did want to kind of ask whether others want to come in beforehand. Just give me a signal. I just do want to check. Maria Francesca, before, yes.
I can come in briefly, but if you want to collect more questions, as you wish.
Yeah, let me have a look. Is there anyone else on the among our participants who would like to come in at this point and make an intervention? Don't be shy. As you can see, our panelists are very friendly. Okay. Well, Maria Francesca, if you want to come in on now, and then we'll see if there are others. brave enough to step forward.
Yeah, as the question from Italy says, very soon during this month, the President of the General Assembly has set a calendar of consultations about a number of proposals and basically all the aspects and proposals made by the Secretary General in the common agenda. So it's not only about digital, I want to clarify. And why do I say this? Because digital cooperation, in fact, in the proposals made by the Secretary General is one of the strands of a much wider enterprise, which is called the Summit of the Future, which will take place in 2023. So this work we are doing, and we really is a big ambitious work, is part of an even bigger set of activities of the UN system as such. And therefore we will try as much as we all work hard at that, to keep the coherence and the consistency of all these strands of work, which will end up in 2023 in the Summit of the Future. So digital cooperation, for which the Office of the Tech Envoy leads, is, complicated, but there is more, and it's even more complicated. Let's put it this way. Global issues, as John Frank said, are really not just for one actor or the other, it's for all of us. So I come to the multi-stakeholderism. Obviously, I would say, leitmotif of the Secretary General in this document, our common agenda, is about opening the UN more, listening more, introducing more, actors in the dynamics of the UN. The modalities to do that, of course, are to be discussed with the membership and have to be appropriate to different areas. Different policy areas might, work differently. So I don't have a specific answer. We will do ABCD today. I will, of course, submit ideas and options in those consultations of the PGA, and we'll listen, because this is the important thing. We are here to listen also, the input from the membership and others. So in this context, I can say, once again, it's a call for you to give us your views if you want. The office has a web page. We have, a lot of willingness to hear from you, suggestions that could be elaborated then in the broader context I mentioned. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maria Francesca. Marina, did you want to come in? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I was thinking about the question you asked about inclusiveness and multi-stakeholderism. It's a difficult question, but I'd also like to recognize what has been done in the recent years. I have a long history in government, I was in the Foreign Service for more than 25 years. And trust me, it's not in the DNA of governments to cooperate with other sectors. That is something new for the governments. So maybe the changes started some 10, 15 years ago, real changes. Today we're at the stage where the political statements are already the right ones. States are committing themselves politically, so it is a step forward. Should we be happy with that, satisfied? Of course not. Because now from the political statements, we have to go to implementation. And I think it's very right what Maria Francesca said in her starting remarks. Maybe we should start with topics that are not polarizing us today too much. Starting with connectivity, starting with other topics where we can come together. Multi-stakeholderism, inclusiveness will only work if we have trust and if we learn to listen to each other. To do that, we have to come either into the same room or on the same screen, but we have to get to know each other. I'm looking at John. It took Microsoft, I don't know how many years before Microsoft was seriously listened to by governments. Because for years it was just another private sector, another representative of industry. But finally, also with the Paris call, the private sector and industry showed that they have their voice. So we have already some examples, and we have to we continue pushing on them. And maybe my final remark, when Laura mentioned that we have to look at wider range of NGOs, not only the typical ones who are coming to the events, but we have to reach out also to those about whom we don't know today, or who are silent, or who are maybe not feel comfortable to come to events like this one. We have to reach out to them, agree. And maybe one more sphere where we have to reach out are politicians and members of parliament. Because trust me, we need politicians, lawmakers who understand what they are writing into the laws. So that's also another group that needs attention in the framework of multi-stakeholderism. And maybe here I'd also like to recognize the work done by the IGF, where since the Berlin IGF, there has been a special parliamentary track. But also as the former chair of the Global Commission, I'm a true believer in inclusiveness and listening to different stakeholders. And trust me, guys, when the Commission first came together, and I was looking at the people, they were coming from industry, from academia, there were former hackers, there were IT geeks, but it worked when we learned about each other and when we started listening to each other. So it's doable. Thank you.
Thanks, Marina. I do want to come to John and Laura as well on this topic, but I do have a request for the floor from India. Sneha, if you would like to take the floor and introduce yourself, that would be wonderful. Go ahead, please go ahead.
Hi, well, thank you so much. It's really been enlightening listening to all the speakers. I don't really have any specific questions. I think this is an ongoing conversation, but I do want to come in, hopefully briefly, to just provide perspective from, let's say, a developing country. Of course, the SG in his roadmap for digital cooperation had highlighted the 3 fundamentals of digital cooperation, which was connect, respect, and protect. And in India, that is what we are working towards. Of course, during the pandemic, we took unparalleled social protection initiatives that were both pro-poor and broad-based in outreach. And here we have to say that various stakeholders came together to use digital technology and the energies of the internet as a force multiplier, whether it was supply of free food to 800 million people or cash transfers to 400 million. All this was streamlined by digitally enabled technology. I don't want to get into the details, but financial inclusion has been a very major part, and that has also been accelerated along with digital transactions that have been stepped up, bringing over 200 million Indian women into the mainstream financial system, thereby ushering in more economic empowerment. Again, all of this through digital technology. Coming through, during this whole COVID period, our indigenous IT platform, we developed an app called the COVID app, which has facilitated effective COVID contract tracing and continues to facilitate our vaccination drive, which of course is the largest in the world. So yes, we have created a strong, transparent, and vibrant digital system, which is inclusive and empowering, offering much needed solutions for tackling poverty, important in a developing country like ours, promoting economic growth and improving productivity through COVID times. However, what I would like to actually highlight here is we cannot deny that technologies are also not creating unprecedented challenges. And these include what have been spoken by many briefers today, invasion of privacy, promotion of misinformation and disinformation, infiltration of critical infrastructure through cyber attacks, threats to human rights, and accentuating the digital divide. So access to technology is not always uniform. And this is what has led to widening disparity, especially when we're talking about developing countries, the global south and the developed countries. And this is something where, we all can agree that UN can step up. So keeping with the central premise of sustainable development goals that we have all spoken about today, and this question of leaving no one behind, we do believe it is imperative that our digital future is human-centric and inclusive. So governance standards and mechanisms, we think, should be developed in an inclusive manner, and the balance should be struck between avoiding misuse and misuse. So I will not take much time of the panel here. Just want to thank everyone again for the very interesting interventions, and I look forward to continuing to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sneha, for bringing your perspective to the table. Really appreciate that. Now, there was something, I do want to kind of come back to something, Marina, that you mentioned now, which is something that stayed with me, which is we need to get to know each other, and trust being the key component of multi-stakeholder cooperation. I, as you said that, I was thinking it would be great to get to know each other, but you first need to be in that same room to get to know people. And I do want to kind of come to Laura and John to kind of see what their perspective is on that. This is kind of in response to the negative trends that we've been seeing, this specifically during the pandemic, where we've seen the shrinking of civic space in UN negotiations around digital issues. And while I think very much agree that we want to get to know each other, but let us then into the room so that we can have the conversation and go to cocktail hour together. Joke aside, but Laura, why don't I come to you first, and then I'm going to come to John as well for your remarks. Laura.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. And this is an excellent question. And really, when Maria Francesca was pointing to the listening and actively listening, it really reminded me back of the UN Charter. And the UN Charter starts off with "we the people." And so it really shows the integral role of civil society, because we are the closest to the rights holders, to the people. And yeah, building on what you mentioned, Leah, on shrinking civic space and what's happened as a result of COVID, I feel like people keep emphasizing that, virtual modalities have allowed for greater participation because people can connect online. But yet this whole discussion today, we've noted the digital divides and the gaps that are existing, and those are mainly affecting those who are at the margins. So if we don't have stable, open, secure connections, those individuals, those civil society representatives can't gain access. So for us to rely simply on virtual modalities or hybrid modalities does not address the issue. And, ensuring that there's not creating a tiered system where civil society is online, but everyone else is in the room. I think Leah really highlighted the importance of getting into the room. And civil society, from our perspective, we have not only had to dedicate our efforts only to the substantive processes such as the cyber security and cyber crime, we've also had to have separate dedicated efforts to gaining access to these platforms. And I know, speaking from an organization that has ECOSOC status, it's even more of a privilege than those who don't have ECOSOC status gaining access even into that room. So I think these are really important considerations we need to move forward. And the global multilateral system in general needs to stop operating in these silos. Even when modalities are happening in New York and Geneva, there needs to be much more crossover. And I alluded to this in my intervention and gave specific examples of what each stakeholder could do, but really recognizing that not only are procedurally we operating in silos, but also thematically, recognizing that the Sustainable Development Goals are rooted in human rights and labor and elsewhere, especially as we move forward on the UN Secretary General's initiatives on digital cooperation.
Thanks, Laura. John, did you want to take the floor as well?
Yeah, sorry. We've all been through this 2 years of pandemic now, and I was reminded a couple weeks ago by a friend of my comment after 2 weeks of working from home. I said, well, I think I could do this for 2 weeks, but I'm not sure I could possibly do this for 2 months. And here we all are, still in a dispersed world. There's a musical in the United States, Hamilton, about one of our founding fathers, and there's a wonderful, fun song about him wanting to be in the room where it happens. And so, and then the joke became getting on the Zoom where it happens. But, there is a sense of wanting to somehow be able to be there. And I hope that one of the lessons we'll take from the pandemic is that having some more meetings be webcast or online, so that you can observe remotely. You don't need to be able to buy a ticket, airline ticket, or pay for hotels to be able to follow the discussion. I think that's something I hope that will continue. But I think there is a sharp division with some member states taking kind of just an absolute position that they should be able to exclude multi-stakeholder participation. And most recently, there's a letter this week on the open-ended working group objecting to the ideas put forward by the chair about having people participate. And I actually think, fundamentally, we recognize we're not nation states. We don't get a vote on any of this, but we do have things to say, especially around technology. And it's like, the internet technology, information technology, it's created by the private sector. The internet's 98% owned and operated by the private sector. We all use it. And so sometimes, our sense is governments bring the perception, often because they have offensive cyber capabilities, that gives them a different perspective on things. And, governments call them citizens, we call them customers. It's a much different relationship, but it's the same set of people. And, being able to bring forward the perspective of customers whose operations, whose lives and everything can be disrupted unintentionally or intentionally by cyber powers, we think is an important voice to be in the room. Not with a vote, but with the ability to bring detailed information and perspective. So we think it is important to be in the room where it happens. And for the open-ended working group, we hope that there can be some process worked out, that there's there can be accommodations made. But we think it is, it's like, again, if we're going to have global governance that works in the 21st century, we need to all get more comfortable with new roles and broader participation.
Thanks, John. Thanks so much. I think it was one of your Microsoft colleagues who at one point said something that stuck with me, which was, we don't want to vote, we want a voice. Is that the right quote, which I quite liked? So the point that stakeholders there are trying to make, that it's not that they are, they have the same role, but going back to the Tunis agenda and the WSIS reference that was made earlier, different stakeholders have different roles and responsibilities in this digital ecosystem. Now, this is actually interesting, thinking about the WSIS, because we'll be going into WSIS negotiations about, we'll be celebrating the 20 years of WSIS, if I'm not mistaken, in a couple of years' time. And I know that there's going to be prep meetings into that. It will be interesting to hear how the panel sees that connection as well. But I do want to go back and explore something else that a number of you mentioned already, and that is the practical things that the Office of the Tech Envoy can do to promote some of the principles that we discuss here, including human rights, including multi-stakeholder cooperation. And I was kind of noting down as you were talking, some really practical things that it would be great to kind of have as an outcome of this conversation, including raising awareness, which is something that Marina talked about these issues, right? Exploring the IGF Plus model as potentially as a space and a platform to promote some of these discussions and advance them. I also quite like the idea about focusing on the positive agenda and identifying areas that we all agree on. I don't want to say low-hanging fruit. I don't think anything here is low-hanging fruit. But that's another area that I heard a couple of you mention. I do want to kind of see and do a round and go through the whole panel again, just to because I don't know if we'll have a chance to go to everyone again, but to kind of offer your views on practical things that the Office of the Tech Envoy should focus on in kind of on the back of the discussion that we just had. And don't feel limited to just the Office of the Tech Envoy, but also thinking about more broadly about the Global Digital Compact agenda and that consultation that was mentioned as well. Would anyone like to go first? I don't want to call anyone out, but does anyone have? Laura? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Leah, and thanks for this question. I just wanted to point out that over 90 non-state stakeholders have actually developed a position paper on this, and we do, and I'll put it in the chat now for those to have access to it, but we do outline some, key practical points in addition to providing transparency on the employment process, but desired working methods, which include, communicating with the broader community, the tech envoy, the office, or other UN institutions, considering more regular updated website, quarterly reports or briefings, open consultations, regular engagement in events. And on that, we actually provide a list of all the relevant events that the position should ensure that they're getting access to, a flagship annual report, continued and enhanced use of social media, and hosted dialogues. I think that's a good starting point, and we do hope that many consider this position paper that we launched back in 2020 and re-upped recently. It has some very key components on that.
That's really useful. Thanks, Laura. For anyone interested, the link to that letter is in the chat. Marina, could I come to you next? Mm-hmm.
Yes, I read partly what was written, and I think that the criticism towards UN from the civil society and NGOs should be taken seriously. I'm not participating. I personally have to say that for me it's also a question, and that I do not understand how come that there is no open list, let's say, of the candidates for tech envoy, because the call was open. So logic says that also the process can be more transparent and more open. But of course, from my side, being part of that process, it's not right, because I'm subjective. I'm not looking at the process objectively. But yes, I agree that we have to listen much more. When I mentioned IGF+, it is a forum where we do come together, different stakeholders, and it has changed in recent years. I remember when I was there as a foreign minister, for me, it was a complete hectic mess. I did not understand what was going on. As a foreign minister, I rushed in, I delivered my speech, I rushed out, and that was that. Can't say that it made a huge impact on me than it was years ago. I was at IGF also as the chair of the Global Commission, where I took more time to look around, to talk to people, to go to different places. Last IGF, we had the opportunity with Maria Francesca to talk briefly, and I was really happy to see that Tech Envoy was present there. The office was present there, was talking, was participating, was in the discussions. And also what was positive, there were more government representatives, I would argue, than ever before, which means that from the state where government was not coming to IGF, it's already in the stage where government officials, ministers, highest level representatives do go there to listen to other stakeholders. There I see small steps, maybe they're baby steps, but I see small steps of improvement. And as to the modalities, yes, I'm also looking at the open-ended working group to see what will be their conclusion and how they will solve it, because it will be it will have a huge impact on any later solutions. And of course, also looking at Maria Francesca, everybody's looking at the Tech Envoy's office. How are you going to continue with your openness, with your willingness to listen and to talk to other stakeholders? So I'm not very pessimistic, but yes, unfortunately, we have to overcome the problem where some states completely exclude talking to other stakeholders. Can we start with soft subjects? When we talk about confidence building measures, I see more states and stakeholders coming together than talking about cybersecurity and international law. So again, coming to Maria Francesca's point, maybe we should start with softer topics, but not jeopardizing our principles and our values and what we have achieved so far. Thank you.
Thanks, Marina. Maria Francesca, I was going to come to you next anyway. Go ahead.
Yes, of course. You posed very good points. I would like to say, like Marina, that progress is happening. Maybe not as fast or as total, as someone would like, but you have to think how many interests are in play and how many balancing acts are necessary to make things progress rather than break down. So that's the proper of diplomacy, of course, is what we do. Let me now more down to earth to recall one thing, that the roundtables, which have been set up by the Tech Envoy Office to implement the roadmap of the Secretary General, are multi-stakeholder venues. They are open to all those who have expressed an interest, and we have indeed a lot of participants who are not member states. Actually, we have more participants who are not member states than member states in some of them. So I would like to say the UN is not that closed as in some areas, in some ways, as it is maybe in other parts of the house. And that's why I was saying, depending on where you are, which policy you are discussing, which context you are, you can do more or you can do less. And that is something we have to accept. It's not everywhere the same kind of balance you can reach. Think how many new events in the UN or convened by the UN are called a forum. A forum is exactly that. It's an open venue. It's not just for member states. And we have now forums on all sorts of policies. I think now with my DESA hat on, there was a question about ECOSOC, financing for development forums. I was yesterday addressing a partnership forum, part of the ECOSOC as well. So, again, factually, I don't think we are as close as we were before, or as some still believe we are. I heard someone said open consultations. Yes, I think that's a very good idea. I think we did that to prepare other big events, and this might be one of the things my office could suggest to do in the current of this year, to reach out more people and more entities than those who are accredited and those who are already in the system. So we are thinking along those lines. And finally, let me say, the more you who believe in multi-stakeholderism advocate for it with member states, the more likely it is that this will happen. So again, let's partner in this, and it will work better. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria Francesca. John, kind of last chance on this question, particularly if you wanna come in.
To me, the Tech Envoy opportunity is the capacity to convene and bring people together and not just have a dialogue, but on work plans and getting concrete. How do we bring the finance side in with the policy side, with the World Bank, regional development banks, with the connectivity side, to actually accelerate progress. And I think it's that capacity to be able to pull people in, going beyond dialogue to practical solutions.
Absolutely. And just to check whether there's anyone else, this is the last call for any comments or interventions from the audience. If you do want to come in, do give me a shout. If not, I think what I want to do is I'm not going to pretend I don't think I can do a summary of the discussion, but where I think we've landed is a very rich discussion. Some important questions that have been raised. What I've gathered from all of this is that the challenges ahead are no small feat. There's a lot of work ahead, but recognizing that a lot of work has already been done, and it's important to keep in mind the progress that's already been made. It sounds like all the panelists kind of agreed on that, and it sounds like the UN, whether we like it or not, is playing an increasingly important role in the broader ecosystem, and it is, I think, up to all of us to make it work in a way that supports a human-centric digital agenda going forward. And I would like to thank all of you for your remarks, and give you an opportunity also to provide kind of 1 minute closing statements if you want, and then we're going to be closing the meeting. John, I'm going to start with you and work in reverse order. So yeah, please go ahead.
I thank the again the Estonian mission and Ambassador Jürgenson for organizing this. I think this topic it's been a very good discussion, and appreciate the opportunity to be with everybody, and just underscoring just the opportunity of this role to bring people together and to make a difference for hundreds of millions of people around the world. The opportunity is tremendous, and I think it's just really exciting to take this forward.
Thanks, John. Laura, do you mind if I come to you next?
Not at all. Thanks, Leah. I think two main takeaways from this discussion. The first on process, to center the voices on those most at risk, everyone, all stakeholders, to ensure transparency, and to remember that civil society is key. We remain keen to engage, and we're always available, and we can gain access to other civil society located across the world. The second point on substance, address the existing gaps. Digital divides and connectivity seems like a theme that we're all in agreement on. Not only within the human rights system, but also in other sectors. I've showed today the linkage between the two. And do not get so bogged on the norms. They're there, they're clear. So let's start establishing those into further action. And then on a final point, I just want to thank you, Leah, for moderating, and thank Estonia for hosting this session.
Thanks, Laura. Marina?
Yes, thank you. Well, it's so easy because it seems that we were like-minded on almost everything we discussed today. One of the points that I took from the panel was that, yes, we have to pay more attention to Global South. And yes, we have to work better on the modalities and how to listen to other stakeholders. Because unfortunately, the process nowadays is sometimes just a tick. Yes, we had consultations, tick. We had consultations with 20, 30, 50 stakeholders, and how many proposals did we take on board? How seriously we listened to them? How seriously we discussed is another question. So it's not only a political statement, but it's very much the substantial work. And here I'd like to just wish all the best for to the Office of Tech Envoy in continuing what you are doing in that field. And coming from Estonia, I've seen how digital can change a small nation. 1.3 million, not a rich nation, small one, but within a decade can become one of the leading digital nations and contribute to the benefits of all people. So I do believe in the digital future, and in one way or another, anyway, I will be connected to the subject. And thank you so much. It was an honor to be on the same panel with you. And Sven, thank you for putting it together.
Thanks, Marina. And last but not least, Maria Francesca.
Well, I want to say, first of all, also thanks to Estonia for putting this panel together. It's so important for us to listen to each other and to learn from each other. And this was a very good panel. I also want to say that maybe not too modestly, but I appreciate all your support and the congratulations you gave. But I will turn these congratulations to my team, because they've been there and they are very good. And without them, this would not have been possible. And also, I would like to highlight the clear message. The UN are useful, are important, can help if they are that convening place, that open place, that fair place where every voice can be listened and heard. So I will take this away with me as the main message, and hope the Tech Envoy office will continue doing it at the top. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and again, thank you to the wonderful panelists that I had a chance to moderate today for your insight and recommendations. Once again, big thank you to His Excellency Jürgenson and the Estonian mission for organizing this panel, and to all of the participants and audience who have been following us either in the room or through the live stream. And with that, thanks everyone. We hope to see each other again somewhere soon, and hopefully in person. But with that, thank you everyone, and have a good evening and the rest of the day wherever you are. Bye.